Big thanks go out to Tywa for supporting today's video via Patreon. Elas core versus Child of Alara. And that's a pretty damn good opening hand, thanks simply to Skull Clamp and Nether Traitor, so definitely keeping that one. Just want to point out as well that this version of Elas core is not the one with Lurrus as the companion. This is a totally new reimagining of the deck in which we can actually play any permanents that we want. Let's drop a swamp here and we'll get down the Nether Traitor. Yeah, so as we can see here, we do have the typical aristocrat sack your creatures shenanigans, and in talking forgot to swing in with the Nether Traitor. That does have haste. Sun Titan can reanimate stuff, of course, and Grave Pact is pretty typical in these types of builds, but couldn't play it if Lurrus was the companion. A Lotus Cobra from our opponent. And now we see a Corpse Knight. Whenever a creature enters under our control, each opponent loses a life. So we'll swing in before we do anything else. And then I think we're fine to just go for the Corpse Knight. We can hold off on Skull Clamp for now. Our opponent gets down a gate, so yeah, they've actually got 2 gates in play. Not sure if it is a gate deck. Right, and an Enchantress's Presence, so these might just be cheap dual lands for them. Not quite sure what they're going for yet. Meat Hook Massacre is a potential board wipe for us as well. Could damage them by getting rid of the Lotus Cobra and just putting 1 into X maybe. Let's go for Elas core here anyway. Each opponent loses a life to the Corpse Knight. And then I'll swing in here. If they want to trade us the Corpse Knight with the Lotus Cobra, then I'm fine with that. And predictably they don't, so let's go for the Skull Clamp then here. Killing off the Nether Traitor with that, of course, so that will trigger Elas core. And we will draw 2 cards to Skull Clamp. Alright, and we've got a land to make next turn. If our opponent manages to get into a big scary creature, then we've got to go for the throat as well. We just have to hope that it's not Child of Alara. But I think this might just be a reset button for them. It seems as though it might be just a generic 5-colour deck. Don't see why you'd play out Enchantress's Presence and then just blow it up with Child of Alara. Alright, it's a Sanctum deck, so yeah, they get into exactly the Sanctum they want. So cantripping with the Enchantress's Presence, and then this will draw them a card next turn, so not going to struggle to keep cards in hand. That is a Polluted Delta for us. Hold on to the fetch just in case we get into Bloodghast. I'll play out the Urborg. And then it's Skull Clamp onto the Corpse Knight, and we'll turn both of these creatures in sideways here, because, again, not particularly worried about them trading us a Lotus Cobra here, but they correctly do not block us. We hit them for 5. Let's go for the Grave Pact here, take advantage of the fact that we're not doing anything else. So there we see Sanctum of Calm Waters starting to draw them some cards. We need to get a wriggle on with regards to getting closer to a victory here. Reducing their life total to 0. Consistently making land drops thanks to the card draw. So Lotus Cobra going to double up their untapped lands. And that is Go Shintai of Ancient Wars. At the beginning of your end step that triggers, pay 1 X damage to a player or planeswalker. And that is one of the creature shrines as well. A Risen Reef, so they'll potentially get another land from that. No land coming in there though, so just get the card draw with it. Cannot afford to pay into the Go Shintai, so not doing any shocks anywhere. Alright, a Swamp for us, mixed up the basics, both snow and regular because we've got Field of the Dead in here. Drop the Swamp, and I think we can just go for the Sun Titan here, start to develop a bit more of a threat. So Sun Titan into play, that will trigger the Corpse Knight, will gain a life from our commander, our opponent will lose a life from Corpse Knight. All these aristocrat effects do get complicated. And we'll ramp a little bit with the Marsh Flats, I think, because we can easily enough get the Nether Traitor out of the bin. And I'll put Skull Clamp on the Sun Titan because I think they're more likely to want to blow up the Sun Titan, so we'll turn that into a 7/5 with Vigilance. And not going to swing in here. Maybe could have been more aggressive and swung in there, and maybe they block with Go Shintai and get less card draw from the Calm Waters here. Just discarding lands to those, by the way, I haven't pointed it out, so discarded a land last turn and this turn. Now throwing out Amulet of Vigor, so that's better with their bounce lands. Or did they play that out already? That was maybe out last turn, I'm not sure. Anyway, they play Boros Guildgate into it, so it becomes untapped. Sphere of Safety now, that does slow us down. They control 4 enchantments at the moment, so we'll have to pay 4 generic in order to swing in at them. 1 being put into the Ghost Shintai, so that will be still 2 damage. Alright, seeing a generous gift, so we can go for that onto the Sphere of Safety. Could go for the Meat Hut Massacre as well. That would have to be 3 if we want to... Oh, actually, no, we've got the Grave Pact. I'm just thinking if we go Meat Hut Massacre for 2, we'll get rid of all but 1 of their creatures, and they'll have to sacrifice the elephant to the Grave Pact. Alright, so let's drop the Polluted Delta. Go Generous Gift onto Sphere of Safety. Give them an elephant token, as we said, and then it is 4 mana in total into the Meat Hut Massacre here. So, should have, in hindsight, left the Skull Clamp on the Corpse Knight during the previous turn, but just playing around the fact that our opponent might have removal. So, we will put our commander back into... Yeah, I think we're fine putting it into the command zone. We can cast it next turn. Meat Hut Massacre gains us a bunch of life, loses our opponent some life. Nether Traitor we are going to put the black mana into. And then, like we said, the Grave Pact is going to make them sack that elephant token, so no downside to the Generous Gift in this case. And that gains us a life because they sacrifice that. And now we are free to swing in with the Sun Titan, so yeah, couldn't do this with Lurrus. Swing in with everything, because we can't have Sun Titan in our deck. If Lurrus is the companion, Sun Titan going to bring back the Corpse Knight straight away, and we'll whack them for a decent chunk there. That is 6 damage to them. If we've nothing else in the bin to grab with the Sun Titan next turn, then I will start ramping ahead by cracking the fetch lands here. Discarding an Elvish Reclaimer this time. They play another fetch, that is a Guild Gate. So I'm thinking maybe they've got a little sub-theme of Guild Gates going on. Wonder if they're spreading themselves a little bit too thin here. Eternal Witness came in, that just grabbed the Sphere of Safety again, which they cannot afford at the moment. So instead deciding on Smothering Tithe. Smothering Tithe nowhere near as good in 1v1 unless you run wheels. But yeah, it's still going to be additional mana for them, particularly useful in a 5-colour deck. So I'll say no to the Smothering Tithe, allow them to have a treasure. Let's... Not going to swing in first, let's go for the Nether Traitor getting clamped. So that will force them to sacrifice the E-Witness. And we do draw a card, so that gives them more Smothering Tithe treasures. So yeah, not as good in 1v1, but particularly good against a Skull Clamp deck. Draw into Hagra Mauling, draw into Anointed Procession as well, because we do have some token stuff in this deck. So maybe I just go for Elas Core here, maybe should have done that before. 4 mana for the Elas Core. And then we'll swing in again. I'm just going to grab the Nether Traitor here, that's all we can go for, and I haven't cracked a fetch yet. We're not going to have one of our creatures die, so can't fish it out any other way. Well, that will trigger the Corpse Knight, have our opponent lose a life, we gain 1 from Elas. Then we'll go Skull Clamp on the Nether Traitor again. So our opponent loses a life to Elas Core, Grave Pact won't do anything, they lose a life to the Meat Hut Massacre as well. Get some more ramp there, as does our opponent thanks to the Smothering Tithe. So I think we just get out a tap land in Myriad Landscape, and yeah, we can hold up Hagra Mauling, I suppose. That will actually cost only 3 mana because they don't control any basic lands, which is unusual. Yeah, so just get down the mana crypt there. Can't equip up the Skull Clamp, unfortunately, so if our opponent does manage to wipe the board or destroy some creatures, then we might wish that we had the Skull Clamp on there. We have got them down to 5 life though, thanks to all the pings, so we're looking pretty promising. Discarding this time a Zamone, Quandrix Prodigy, and Sithis Harvest Hand coming into play. That will cantrip them because it's an enchantment creature. We need to take note of the fact that they can gain life with Sithis as well, so if they play a bunch of enchantments here. Alright, getting rid of our Skull Clamp, we can get that back out with Sun Titan easily enough, so I'm not too worried about that. And they might have managed to get a land out there, I'm not sure this island was here previously. But Broken Bond does allow you to play a land. And then Eidolon of Blossoms for our opponent, so they're getting into the Enchantress stuff, they just can't keep it in hand, or keep it in play, thanks to the Grave Pact. So I'm feeling fairly confident here at this point. They go back up to 6 life, and now seeing that Sphere of Safety. So they draw a couple of cards there, one from Sithis, one from the Enchantress's Presence. I will blow this up before the Sphere of Safety hits play because this is on entry as opposed to cast. And I'm not sure if I missed these basics during the last turn. Maybe they just played them this turn, but they do control basics now, so Hagra does cost 4 mana in total now. Maybe I just missed those basics previously. Now controlling 5 enchantments. We can get rid of the Sithis and then it will only be 4 to swing in per creature. Okay, and Smothering Tithe, going to trigger again. They've still got 6 cards in hand, they're on 7 life. Drop a land, drew into Zulaport Cutthroat, which is, yeah, a useful thing for us to have access to here. So play out the Zulaport Cutthroat before anything else. That will have our opponent lose a life to the Corpse Knight again. And then it's go for the throat onto the Sithis. And that is going to allow us to get through here, so we'll just swing in with the Sun Titan. See if they've got any removal for us. Sun Titan gets through and triggers. We will grab that Skull Clamp back. Okay, managed to get them down to 0 exactly, so yeah, you can see our life total compared to theirs, and they really want to get into the long game. If they'd managed to get into some kind of board wipe there, or they'd played Child of Alara, would have actually been really difficult for us, because we would have forced them to sacrifice it by accident to the Grave Pact at some point, I'm sure, but then they lose their board as well, so yeah, bit of a tricky one to play around Child of Alara, but it's obviously not what the deck is intended for. This is just a desperate reset button. So maybe should have played that, but anyway, that was the brand new Elas Il-Kor deck without Lurrus as the companion, and this is the more powerful variant, I think. There's nothing to stop you putting Lurrus in the 99, but I just think there's really powerful permanents that are 3 CMC and up that are well worth including in this deck, so you can check it out in the description below. You can compare both decks if you want to, and see which one you prefer. Huge thank you to the patrons as ever. I'm tribalkai. Thank you for watching.